Hey everybody, welcome back to the Manup table. We started a new series last week called Life to the Full. I guarantee you, once you stepped into this series, you started recognizing the hevel of life. All the stuff started coming at you, and hopefully you also recognized the tov. We learned from the teacher. Last week, Solomon began to teach us through his book called Ecclesiastes. It's the memoir of his life. And just quite frankly, Solomon was the wisest man that ever lived. At times, he felt like the dumbest man that ever lived. See, he made a lot of mistakes. And the beauty of the book is he captures the turmoil of life, and he's honest about it in the book of Ecclesiastes. In particular, we learned two words last week called hevel and tov. And it's the harsh reality of life that hevel happens. Hevel is empty or vapor or meaningless, like you just can't seem to get it together. 38 times in the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon wrote that life felt like hevel. But he also wrote another word, and it was called tov, 41 times, just a few more times than the other. He said life is beautiful, and we should learn to enjoy it. Here's the truth about life. Both of those exist. Man, I've gotten some phone calls and texts this week. I talked to one of our Manup guys this week. He started telling me all the hevel that was happening in his life. And he literally said these words to me, and I couldn't agree more. He goes, I just wish God would throw me a bone. I mean, I'm tired of the bad stuff happening. I'm ready for something good to happen. That's kind of where we pick up this week. In fact, the premise of Life to the Full series is there's so many things in life that are outside of our control, so we should enjoy the things that we can. In fact, in particular, we're going to do 4 weeks starting today of how to enjoy the everyday pleasures of life. Today, we're going to talk about enjoying what you have. Enjoying what you have, not pining for what you don't have, but the practice of enjoying what you have. Next week, we're going to talk about enjoying what you do, your calling in life, the work that your hands produce. How do you enjoy that for God's glory? And then week 3, we're going to talk about enjoying who you're with, enjoying your family and your wife and your kids and your grandkids and your coworkers and your friends. How do you be present for the people in your life? And then lastly, we'll finish the series with enjoy while you can. Here's the stark reality of life. It's coming to an end, my friend. And Ecclesiastes says, live your life with the end in mind. Okay, are you ready? Here we go. Enjoy what you have. Here's the truth about that. It seems like no matter how much you have, it'll never be enough. No matter how much you have, there's just this innate desire in mankind that we want more. My wife and I, the first house we ever had was about 800 square feet. And quite frankly, we did need a little bit more space than that. And boy, when we moved up to that 1,200 square foot house, we thought we are set forever. But eventually, we needed a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. And in life, if we're not careful, we'll spend more time focusing on what we don't have or what we do want instead of enjoying what we do have and what we have already been given from God. Last night we were cooking. It seems like we do a lot of that, and the weekends are a time of relaxation and cooking at my home. And we were cooking last night, and we had the TV on. We were in the kitchen. We were watching a show from Eva Longoria, okay? And it was her going through Mexico and cooking all these different flavors. It was a beautiful show, beautifully shot, colors and vibrant. The food looked amazing. And it was kind of cold here in Austin over the weekend, and it looked beautifully warm. And my wife's over there at the stove. She goes, I wish that's where we were. I said, yeah, me too. I wish we were in Mexico right now and just wearing shorts and enjoying all that. I says, but we're not. We're here. And what we do have is some chips and salsa. It was not quite Eva Longoria, right? It wasn't all the beautiful food of Yucatan, but we did pull out some chips and some salsa because we were trying to enjoy what we had. Here's the reality. We live in a culture that's obsessed with more. We want more money and more pleasures and more perks and more vacations and more square footage. We just want more of almost everything. In fact, the American home has an average of 200 television channels. 200. I remember the days where we had 3. And you had to fix the rabbit ears just right to get those 3. But now we've got 200 plus. I also read yesterday that the average American that has 200 plus channels actually only watches about 12 of them. But we just want to have more, even if we don't have the capacity for it. Did you know that there are 100 social media platforms? 100 places for you to consume and post more time and more content and get more likes and more followers? Did you know that there are over 200 video streaming services that all they want is just a mere $12.99 a month? They all want that. And there's more popping up all the time. And by golly, if you want more, you can bundle this one with that one. I taught a similar series to this years ago, about 8 years ago. And I said, you know, that on Apple's, on the iTunes, Apple Music, this is 8 years ago, there are 20 million songs. Boy, 20 million. How would we ever have time for that? Do you know 8 years later, there are now 100 million songs on iTunes? We're a culture that's obsessed with more. Even Baskin-Robbins, I found out yesterday, has 1,400 flavors. What happened to 31? 1,400 flavors. We're obsessed with more. But often, no matter how much you have, it'll never feel like enough. In our character study here, Solomon had it all. Solomon had everything he ever wanted and then some more. In fact, Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. Those are women that he just said, come sleep with me. You don't even have to be my wife, but I'll take care of you if you'll sleep with me. 700 wives, alliances with other nations, 300 concubines. Solomon had 180,000 men just in his labor force to build things. 180,000 men that were just tasked. Those aren't the cooks and the dancers and all that, just the builders. He built a temple with those 180,000 men. That took 7 years to build. 180,000 person workforce worked on one building for 7 years. And when they finished that, he said, I want to build a house. And his house, his palace, was so large and so ornate that it took 180,000 men 13 years to build. Man, Solomon had everything and more. Solomon had 12,000 horses and 1,400 chariots. He had so many horses, it literally says in 1 Kings that he had to build 3 cities just to keep up with all of his horses. He had some horse cities. He had gardens and parks and lakes. He had singers and dancers and comedians. In fact, according to historians, they say he had a party at his house every night for somewhere between 15 to 20,000 people a night. Solomon was chasing the wind, but he couldn't find what he was looking for. We're going to say it this way in the fill in the blank. King Solomon had it all, but it was never enough. King Solomon had it all, but it was never enough. In fact, he said in Ecclesiastes 1, his memoir, everything began to feel meaningless or hevel. It was completely hevel. Everything is wearisome beyond comparison or description. No matter how much we see, Solomon says, we're never satisfied. No matter how much we hear, we're never content. We want more. He said, I learned firsthand that pursuing all of this is like chasing the wind. King Solomon had it all, but it was never enough. He says in verse 17 of Ecclesiastes 2, so I came to hate my life. I came to hate life because everything done here under the sun felt so troubling or so empty. Everything felt meaningless. It felt like I was chasing the wind. I want you to take your pens and circle the words under the sun. He's going to repeat this phrase multiple times in the book of Ecclesiastes that ultimately means unless life is meaningless, unless there's more than life itself. Life is meaning. If this is all there is, this will never be enough. See, he begins to tip his hat at what he talks about is there is an eternal God that will eternally reward us for the things that we do and eternally judge us for the things that we do. And he begins to tip his hat that no matter how much you have in this life, it's just never going to be enough because we were created, according to Ecclesiastes 3, with eternity planted in our hearts by God himself. He says it felt like chasing the wind, all this stuff and women and song and wine and parties. He goes, it just was chasing the wind. And so we're going to just talk about a couple of those things that Solomon chased and that we do too. We call it, in the next section, things that we chase. Things we chase. Are you ready? Don't take offense. I promise you, if you just put on your receptive heart here, you're going to go, yeah, me too. I'm with Solomon. I've chased that too. And I've come to the same conclusion. Number one, we chase money, but it's never enough. We chase money, but it's never enough. Ecclesiastes 5, verse 10. He says, those that love money, they're never going to have enough. How meaningless to think that wealth brings true happiness. This was written by a guy who was net worth of $2.1 trillion. $2.1 trillion. He goes, man, it's just never felt like enough. I had anything I ever wanted, but it wasn't enough. In fact, he says, the more I had, the more people came to help me spend it. Isn't that true? We chase money, but it's never enough. For you, you're like, well, I don't chase money. I'm just chasing security. I'm just chasing retirement. I'm just chasing just a little bit more. And quite frankly, we often put our trust in money, and it will often let us down. Second thing we chase is we chase power. We chase power. Sometimes the money's not enough. Often it's not. And we're like, you know what? If I just had that promotion or that recognition, or if I had power at the workplace, or if I had power in my social status, I just want a little bit more power. And Solomon had all the power he can imagine. He had so much power, nobody in his entire kingdom, in his entire leadership as a king, nobody ever came against him. He was so mighty and so powerful, nobody challenged his power. And here's what he wrote about that immense power that he had in Ecclesiastes 8. He goes, not a single one of us can hold back our spirit from departing. None of us have the power to prevent the day of our death. There's nobody that gets to escape that obligation, that dark battle. He's going, man, the most powerful person ever eventually dies. So the pursuit of power will never be enough. The third was this. We chase pleasure, but it'll never be enough. We chase I taught a lesson on this years ago. It was called Chasing Happy. It just seemed like it was always outside of our reach. You just need one more experience, one more vacation, one more promotion, one more toy, one more house, just a little bit more, and then we'll be happy. But it seems like chasing the wind. In Ecclesiastes 2, Solomon said, I said to myself, come on, let's try pleasure. Let's look for the good things in life. But I found that this too was meaningless. Anything I wanted, I would take. I denied myself of no pleasure. He had everything, every pleasure he could possibly want, but he said it still felt empty. How about this? We chase sex, but it's never enough. We chase sex and all that goes with it. Because some of you right now, you're like, oh, I'm not chasing sex. But we chase lust, right? It's a version of that. We chase porn, like we chase the excitement of it or the allure of it. You may not be out doing it or committing it. You may not be having an affair, but we chase the high of the allure, of the passion. And it's, you know this, I've found it to be true in my life as a man. It's never enough. It's never enough. That one more scroll or that one more screen, it won't satisfy the one that the last one didn't. We chase that, and it's never enough. In 1 Kings 11, King Solomon says he loved foreign women. The Lord had clearly instructed the people of Israel, don't marry the foreign women, not because they were foreign. Don't take it out of context. He says, don't marry them because they worship other gods. They don't worship the God, and they're going to turn your heart to their gods and away from the one true God. In 1 Kings 11, it says this, yet Solomon insisted on loving them anyway. How true is that in our life? God warns us of things in the scripture, says it's going to pull your heart away from me. And we know it's true, but we do it anyway. We chase it anyway. In fact, it says he had 700 wives of royal birth. That means he made alliances with 700 other kings. By the way, that was not a sexual desire. He was scared to death. He couldn't trust God to protect him, and he had to build all these little alliances. He was a really fearful man. So he built all these alliances. And then on top of that, he says, I also want 300 women to sleep with, so bring them in too. We chase this sex, and it'll never be enough. It says, in fact, all this did was turn his heart away from the Lord. And then lastly, hey, any of these hitting so far? I probably stepped on all your toes so far, so let's go ahead and get one more. We chase fame, but it's never enough. You say, well, I don't want to be famous. Oh, really? Don't we want more followers and more likes and more recognitions and more promotions and more attaboys, right? I can pursue that in my life. I know you can too. And we chase this illusion that if other people would acknowledge us, that would finally bring us the satisfaction that we need. But he said this interesting discourse in Ecclesiastes 1. It says, history merely repeats itself. It's all been done before. Nothing under the sun is truly new. Sometimes people say, oh, here's something new. But actually, it's just old. In fact, nothing is ever truly new. We don't remember what happened in the past. And in the future generations, nobody will remember what we're doing now. Because life just like comes and it goes and it ebbs and it flows, and we're chasing this elusive fame that somehow our legacy will live on forever. I can't tell you who my great-great-granddad's name was. I don't know. I'm sure he was a great man, and I appreciate what he did for our family. But I don't even know who he is. This is part of life. You say, Jay, this is all kind of depressing. I think it's just a realization. I think it's being honest about this fame that we chase, these promotions and attaboys in life. Because when you're gone, people won't even remember what you did. In fact, we spend most of our life chasing things that we never find. We chase things we never find. Here was his conclusion in Ecclesiastes 7. He goes, this was my conclusion, says the teacher. I've discovered this after looking at the matter from every possible angle. Boy, he looked at it from every angle, didn't he? I mean, he left no pleasure unturned. He goes, and I've looked at it from every possible angle. And though I have searched repeatedly, I have not found what I was looking for. You know that song from Bono and U2? It's right out of Ecclesiastes. Still haven't found what I'm looking for. And right now, listen, I pray you're just dialing in. I pray you're resonating with this, going, yeah, these things, they promised me happiness and security and joy, and they didn't deliver what they promised. Now, let me just say this. It's not that the things themselves are bad. Money, pleasure, acknowledgments, joy, sex, all these things, they're gifts from God. But when we worship these gifts as God, they make a terrible God. But when we receive them as gifts from God, God, thank you for them. They're from you. I'm going to use my money to honor you. I'm going to enjoy sex as I honor it inside of marriage. I'm going to enjoy pleasure as I Sabbath and enjoy you. As we honor God with these gifts, we don't chase them as gods. So here's my question. What are you chasing? Is it money or power or pleasure or sex or fame or something else? Maybe I didn't mention the thing that has consumed you, but what are you chasing? I encourage you to think through that. Be able to write that down. You got plenty of space in your book to just write down or circle some of these. Some of you might say to me right now, Jay, how do I know what I'm chasing? How do I know what I'm chasing? I think if you pay attention to three things, you'll know what you're chasing. Where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your money? And what consumes your thoughts? Where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your money? And what consumes your thoughts? It'll tell you what you're chasing. As I was previewing this lesson over the weekend, getting ready for today, I thought, there are a couple things on my phone that are consuming my time and my energy and my thoughts right now. And it's LoopNet. You thought I was going to say something else, didn't you? It's LoopNet. I'm in the process of trying to look for a studio, a space that we can have as our own at Manup. And I'm obsessed with it. Like every couple of minutes, I'm looking to see, did a new lease pop up in the Lakeway Bee Cave area? I feel like I'm chasing this elusive space and hoping that something will come up. At other times, it's been Cycle Trader. Even though I've got 2 incredible motorcycles that I enjoy, I bet there's one that's just a little bit better, a little bit faster. It just has a little more torque than mine does, a little more top speed than mine does. And guess what? There always will be. What are you chasing? Pay attention to your time, your money, and what consumes your thoughts. And that'll tell you what you're chasing. In Ecclesiastes chapter 6, we're going to turn the corner here for the remainder of the lesson and turn to the positive side of the lesson. That was the reality check, and now we're going to get into the tov. What can we enjoy? If those things feel like hevel, what feels like tov? Ecclesiastes chapter 6, verse 9, this is what the whole lesson is summarized in this one verse. The teacher says, enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't have. Enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't have. In fact, daydreaming about nice things is meaningless. It's like chasing the wind. I've often said it, Manup, if you don't learn to enjoy what you already have, you'll never enjoy what you think you want. If you don't learn how to enjoy what you already have, then when you get that thing that you're chasing, it won't satisfy you either. A good friend of mine bought a new car a week or so ago, and we went to lunch. We had an amazing lunch. It happened to be a beautiful, beautiful, sunny, crisp day here in Austin. And we finished lunch. He goes, "You got a few minutes?" I said, "Sure." I said, "Wow, what you want?" He goes, "Why don't you want to take you for a little ride?" I said, "In what?" He goes, "In that." And he pointed to a literal supercar, Audi convertible, R8 Spider, blah, blah, blah. Super amazing machine. 600 plus horsepower, all-wheel drive. And we had a blast. I mean, this hair was flying around and sun was on my face. And we went all down the Oasis Road in Bullock Hollow. I mean, we were peeling out and we had a lot of fun. But that's not my car. That's his. And I'm glad he got it. I hope he loves every minute of it. But it reminded me of the Volkswagen Beetle convertible I had for a while. And you know what? I loved that just as much. I paid $5,000 for that car. But I enjoyed driving that little thing. I enjoyed putting the top down. It was canary yellow. I looked like a wuss driving that thing. But man, I loved it while I had it. And I hope one day I'll have one again. What is it that God's already given you? Instead of wishing what your brother had or your friend had, how about you just get in your own little convertible and enjoy it? Instead of wishing you were in Mexico with Eva Longoria fixing all these fancy meals, break out the chips and salsa, because that's what you've got. That's where we're going to go right now. We're going to call it 3 ways to enjoy what you have. 3 ways to enjoy what you have. Here's the first way to enjoy what you have. Work hard for it. There's something about hard work that God put that in our spirit in the garden. When God placed Adam in the garden, before sin, work was not part of sin. In fact, the curse to work was part of sin, but work itself was in a perfect garden. He placed him in there and he says, I want you to work this thing and I want you to keep working it. I want you to turn it into something amazing. Be fruitful, multiply, rule, reign, and have dominion. And get satisfaction from your hard work. Ecclesiastes 2, verse 22, Solomon asked an interesting question. He goes, what do people get in this life for all their hard work and their anxiety? He goes, what's the end goal of all this? Their days of labor are filled with pain and grief, and at night their minds can't rest. It all feels Hevel. It all feels empty or meaningless. Unless. Remember I told you a proverb is kind of two juxtaposing truths? And sometimes we can just pick one or the other, but I think both of these can be true. We can go to bed at night and go, man, what was all that about? All the hustle this week, and the back and the forth, and the driving, and the miles, and the this and the that. The clocking in, the clocking out, oh, it was all so hevel. But it can also be true, what we're going to read next. He says, so I decided, by the way, decided can also mean concluded or discovered. It can be translated, so I discovered there's nothing better than to enjoy your food and enjoy your drink and find satisfaction in your work. Then I realized, or I discovered, that these pleasures are from the hands of God. For who can eat or enjoy anything apart from him? God gives you the wisdom, the knowledge, and the joy to do what pleases him. He said sometimes work does feel toilsome and burdensome and empty and vain and repetitive. He goes, but to the best you can, when that work produces a good food, a good drink, and a good feeling of satisfaction, learn to enjoy that. Look up at your work and go, by God's grace, with his gifts and the talent he's given me and the opportunity and the health, I was able to do that. I worked hard for that. In fact, I say this, the harder you work for it, the more you'll enjoy it. The harder you work for it, the more you enjoy it. Here's how I know that to be true. Sometimes in life we're given things and we don't value them near as much as something we had to really, really work hard for. When I was 7 years old, my brother and I started a lawn business at 7. We had little flyers printed up. It says, tired of cutting grass? Going on vacation? Let the Huffman boys do it. And had a little clip art of somebody pushing it. And we printed them off at the church and handed them out in the neighborhood. We had 10 or 15 clients. I was a 7-year-old. And we were saving our money. And then we bought a snapper mower. Not those cheap Murray mowers at Kmart. We bought us a snapper. And then we used that money to line our pockets at 7 and 8. And the first thing I bought with the money I saved was a 10-speed bicycle. Oh, I'd had the 1-speeds, but I wanted a 10-speed. I mean, it had the little handles that went down like that and had all the gears, had the chain that would come off all the time. I loved that bike. Not because it was an amazing bike, but because I had worked hard for it and I was able to enjoy it, the fruits of my labor. So work hard for it. Number 2, thank God for it. Thank God for it. When you do accomplish something, when you do receive something, when you're able to go to the grocery store. I went yesterday. I mean, it's like $300. You're putting all that stuff in there, and the temptation is to gripe and complain about how much it costs. And I wish it was cheaper, right? But I'm so grateful that we get to buy it to begin with. I'm so grateful that we get to put those bags in the back of the SUV and take them home and cook an amazing pasta dinner. As I sit down over my dinner, I say, Lord, I just thank you for this. I thank you for each of the bites that we'll have tonight. I thank you for this home that we have to eat it in. When I go to bed at night, I thank God for my bed. I thank you for this comfortable place. I thank you for the heater that makes it nice and warm. I thank you for this down comforter that's soft and helps me sleep. You say, Jay, that's kind of silly. Maybe so. But I promise you, if you thank God for it, you'll be more grateful of it. You'll be able to enjoy it more if you say, God, this is a gift from you. I haven't always had this, and I may not always. Others may or may not. But for right now, I'm just going to thank you for it. Ecclesiastes 3, verse 13, he says it again. People should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of their labor, for these are gifts from God. In fact, fill this in. Everything you have is actually a gift from God. Right now, somebody prickled up and you're going, no, it's not. I earned that. Okay. Who gave you the opportunity to earn that? Well, I earned the opportunity to earn that. Okay. Who gave you the health to earn the opportunity to earn that? Oh, God did. Who gave you the breath in your lungs and the sunshine to grow things around you and keep you alive? Who gave you any of this? God did. So practice thanking God for it. I'm encouraging these days to get outside when you can. Sit on the back porch. Thank God, last night we were on the back porch, had a little fire on, and I watched a cardinal fly into the bush in the empty lot next to us. And then another one, and then another one. And before long, there were like 10 cardinals, bright red birds, sitting in that bush. It was almost like a burning bush. I had to say that, right? And I literally looked at that and said, thank God. How beautiful is creation and nature around us. Work hard for it. Thank God for it. And then lastly, share it with others. Share it with others. When God gives you something, the things that you have, the fruits of your labor, when you hoard it for yourself, you'll always be afraid that it'll be gone. You'll have a scarcity mentality instead of a generosity mentality, instead of an abundance mentality. Instead of saying, you know what, God brought it to me, and he's going to give it through me. He brought it to me. He's going to give it through me. There's more where that came from. God can always continue to bless me so that I can be a blessing to others. In fact, years ago, I taught a series called Blessed on the life of Joseph. And the number one thing that we said for 7 weeks in a row is blessing is from God, but it's for others. It's from God, but it's for others. Hey, receive it. Work hard for it. Thank God for it. And then turn around and say, who can we share this blessing with? We got a call a week or two ago from one of Ansley's friends from college. And she'd been out to the house multiple times with Ansley over the years, and we had become friends with her as well as a couple. And she told Rebecca, she said, I'd love to come out to your house in the country and have dinner. She goes, sure. So we got Madison scheduled for dinner. And Rebecca says, you want Ansley to come? She goes, no, I just want it to be us. She wanted uninterrupted time with Mama and Daddy, I guess. She wanted us to feed her and laugh with her and pay attention to her and let her talk and be present for her. That was last night. She came over, I thought, just for dinner. 4 hours later, she goes, would you mind if I spend the night? I brought a bag just in case. Absolutely. You know what? Here's the truth. When you share your life with others and your home with others, and you share your table with others, or your food with others, or your fancy convertible, or your cheap one, when you share what you have with others, you're actually the one that gets blessed. You're the one that receives the blessing. In fact, in Proverbs chapter 11, Solomon wrote this, give freely, and you'll become more wealthy. Don't hold on to it like this. Hold on to it like this. As God gives it to you, let him give it through you. Give freely and become more wealthy. If you're stingy, you're going to lose everything. The generous will prosper, and those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed. Those who refresh others will actually be the ones refreshed. We say it this way. The more you give, the more you'll have. The more you give away what God's given you, the more blessing you have, the more relationships you have, the more joy you have. And I'm praying today that you'll work hard for the gifts of God, that you'll thank God for it when they come, and that you'll practice sharing those with others. I can't wait to see what God's going to do in your life.